What's going on, guys? So in front of you, you were looking at two items that people have asked me to make a video on for a long time, and to kind of compare and contrast what you might use each one for and in what circumstances one may be better. On the left side, you have a channel-mounted 2 5/16 inch traditional ball coupler that would go on a relatively heavy-duty bumper pull trailer. On the right side, you have a Lynette ring that's designed to work with a Pintle hitch. Now, this typically is going to go on the same weight and size trailers as this heavy-duty version of a channel mount coupler, but this can also go to extreme levels well in excess of what this is capable of handling. Let's talk about both of these. Hang tight, I'll be right back. And for those of you who've been looking at this part of my conventional hitch wondering if it's cracked right there, it's not. It's just the painted finish is coming off. Okay, so again, these are two types of connections that you would typically see on your heavier duty channel mount style trailers. And what do I mean by that? I mean a trailer that has a U-shaped channel up front so you can adjust the height of your coupler. Now, whenever you're talking about a channel style trailer, typically, not all the time, but typically they are going to have a higher weight rating than most other trailers that have a coupler that's permanently attached to the front of it. And those ratings are usually going to be in excess of 10,000 pounds. Typically in the 12 to 15 to 20,000 pound GVWR rating is where you're going to see a channel style coupler attachment. And again, that's just where this can bolt into place on the front of the trailer and you can adjust the height, whether you're talking about a traditional coupler or a Lynette ring or Pintle ring. Now, in front of you are just two examples of these. They make these in all sorts of different sizes and different capacity ratings and different use cases. This one right here is rated at 15,000 pounds gross vehicle weight, and this one right here is rated at 20,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. However, again, there are a lot of dump trailers in that 10 to 15,000 pound range that you might see either of these being used on. When it comes to a traditional coupler like this for a 2 5/16 inch ball, these can usually go all the way up to about 25,000 pounds, maybe 30,000 pounds max in terms of towability using this type of coupler. If you're going to go over that, or well, let's just say if you're going to go 20,000 pounds or greater, that's really where you start seeing more of a scenario where you might see a Pintle ring or a Lynette ring automatically built into the front of the trailer or automatically included in the front channel. In many cases, they'll just give you both. So you have the choice if you're going to be in that 15 to 20,000 pound range, or maybe even up to 25,000 pound range. But once you exceed 25, 30, 35, 40,000 pounds and you're getting into that 30 to 80,000 pound range, those super heavy trailers that are being hauled by dump trucks and military vehicles and agricultural vehicles, that's where the Lynette ring is absolutely going to out capacity the traditional 2 5/16 inch ball. And you're typically going to need a specific Pintle hook on the back of your vehicle to support that type of weight, because your hitches that allow for Pintle connections just aren't going to be able to match those types of weight capacities. So a Pintle ring can go up to 80, 90, 100,000 pounds if you get the right one on the right type of trailer and you have the right type of truck to actually tow it. And typically in those circumstances, you're going to see it attached to the back of like a commercial dump truck or even a semi-truck, a class 7 or 8 vehicle that's designed to tow extreme capacities. In the military sense of things, I mean, those vehicles can get up to 120,000, 200,000 pounds worth of gross vehicle weight, and the trailers can get just crazy heavy depending on what they're hauling. And a Pintle connection is really going to be the only type of connection that you see in those circumstances. Whenever you're talking about the most common type of trailer you would see being towed down the road for commercial application, let's just say you're a construction company and you are going to be hauling a skid steer, excavator, or a mini excavator, maybe a backhoe, things like that. That's typically going to be on a trailer that has between a 15 and 25,000 pound maximum weight rating. And you still may see Pintle connections when you get to the higher end of that. But in those cases, a lot of times you'll still see a traditional 2 5/16 inch coupler, because again, these can go all the way up to like 25,000 pounds. That said, folks who are wondering which one they should get within that 15 to 25,000 pound rating would probably opt for a traditional coupler unless they need the articulation of a Pintle or a Lynette ring with a Pintle hook. And again, the main reason why you might want to get something like this is because of the articulation at that point. If you're going way heavier than that, then you're getting it because of its capacity rating. But if you're in that 15,000, 20,000 pound rating, then typically, again, something like this would be because you have a trailer that's going to articulate quite a bit behind the truck. Now, the downside to a Pintle connection is the fact that you can tell it's going to be a sloppy connection. So let's go ahead and get these mounted on the back of the truck so you can see what I'm talking about when I talk about articulation and the slop that's going to be inherent with a Lynette ring on a Pintle connection. Okay, so we're at the back of the truck now. We're going to go ahead and take our traditional coupler. Again, this one's rated at 15,000 pounds, but I have one that's rated at 20,000 pounds, and I have one that's rated at 22 and 25,000 pounds. So again, you can get these with some pretty dang high capacity ratings, but when you're looking at a traditional ball and socket coupler, the opening for this is pretty much just going to fit right over your traditional 2 5/16 inch ball. So whenever it's hooked in place, you lock it, you're locked on, and this is what your articulation is going to look like. Now, if you are going over big angles, this is where you might actually get caught up or bound, especially if you're trying to look at your breakover angle whenever you're cresting a hill. And that's essentially the limitation of a coupler like this. And again, if it is, you know, a super, super, super heavy trailer, then the limitation may be the capacity. But for most people, unless it's going to be, you know, a super heavy extreme commercial application, or it's going to be military or agricultural application, this is going to be something that's going to be well within the capacity rating of a trailer you might own. But again, your limitation is that type of articulation. Side to side is always going to kind of be limited just because the ball's going to bind up inside of the coupler right around this point right here. But, you know, it works really well, and the reason why people typically use this type of connection is because it's going to fit 99% of most people's applications within the weight range that you would use this. Now, if we're going to take this off and remove the Pintle hook attachment there, put the Lynette ring on, and we will slide this out and lock it in place. So now we have the Lynette ring on with the Pintle hook. So this is now designed to essentially cradle this hook, and this comes out to prevent it from coming off. This is a connection that's going to be a lot louder. It's going to be a lot looser, and you're going to hear it typically. If you're hauling a trailer that has a Pintle connection, when you hit the brakes, it's liable to slam forward like that. Then when you take off, it's going to pull back. If you're going over uneven surfaces, it's going to bounce around. But you do gain a little bit more forward and back articulation. This thing can rock in a pretty extreme way. You never really want it to bind up against this to where it's pulling solely against this bracket right here. That said, though, the way Gen Y has designed this Pintle adapter right here, I think is really, really creative, and it works really well. There's no scenario I can imagine personally to where I could see this coming off, because this is all really, really thick steel. And in some cases, whenever you look at a Pintle hitch or a Pintle connection, it only has one piece of steel right here that holds this in place. So the key here is that traditionally with a Pintle connection, you're going to be tongue weight heavy. You're going to have more tongue weight pressing down on the back of the vehicle versus, you know, like an RV or a travel trailer or a utility trailer that you might typically hitch up to. Oftentimes it's because the trailers that you see these on have the axles positioned further to the back. So whenever you load something like a skid steer or a mini excavator or a backhoe, the weight is going to really, really be focused towards the back of the vehicle. And that's another reason why typically when you see a Pintle connection being used on a truck, it's going to be a heavier duty truck. You don't see a lot of Pintle connections on SUVs or light duty pickup trucks. That said, you know, this can really, really be helpful for folks in an off-road scenario. Side-to-side articulation isn't great, but forward and back articulation is really, really nice. And the fact that you can get these in some pretty extreme numbers if you're looking for it. But if you are looking to buy a dump trailer, if you're looking to buy a utility trailer, and the trailer that you're looking for is going to be between that 10 to 20,000 pound range, unless you need that type of articulation, there's really no need to use a Pintle hitch with a Lynette ring because it's not going to really offer you any great benefit in terms of towability other than the ease of towing, right? Less moving parts. It's a super simple setup because it's essentially just one solid ring. There's no moving parts here. It's super easy to hook up to. If you just simply need to hook up to something to move something around, you know, that's all it's to it. There's no coupling needed other than just inserting it within the actual ring itself. And again, you can really see how something like this is super easy to hitch up to because the hole is huge and you're simply hooking it over your ball. and then locking it in place with an adapter, or if you have a Pintle hitch, you have a part that'll come down and clamp over it so this can't come undone. The other side too is you really can see if this is wearing out, and for most people this is just not going to wear out. It's such thick steel that you're just not going to find yourself in a scenario where this is going to bust open or break open. And even if you do wear it out to that point, you'll see the signs of it happening long in advance, hopefully, of it actually failing. But that's really it. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, using a traditional coupler versus a Lynette ring with a pintle hook is entirely personal preference. Just understand, if you don't need this, I wouldn't recommend using something like this, only because it's going to be loud, it's going to be clunky, it's going to be unnecessary in most cases. If you are a commercial operator, construction company, you're constantly hitching up to equipment trailers where something like this is going to be better simply because of the ease of hitching up, because of how simple that is, or you just need something that's going to have the most robustness built into it, then this is probably something that would work well for you. But if you use a Lynette ring with a pintle hook, please drop a comment below. I'd love to know what your application for it is and why you might prefer it over a traditional coupler. I hope this video has been informative. If you guys haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.